Hello, welcome to another episode of Namtaro Talks. First of all, I would like to thank those of you who have been following this series. I know the last two episodes was a bit heavy, to say the least, but like I promised towards the end of the last episode, this episode would be a bit more fun and light, hopefully. Yeah, before things got pretty crazy, I was watching a lot of movies. Of course, I have my to-watch list that I have collected over the years, and of course, I order that list based on tiers of what's more urgent to watch and what I will watch whenever. Personally, I stand by most of the choices of the movies I choose to watch, and it's not like I watch a whole bunch every day. I just watch whenever I feel like it, and usually I only have the capacity for one movie a day, maybe two if I have a lot of free time that day or the movies are a bit shorter. Personally, I prefer movies that are less than 2 hours. And after watching movies for a while, you come to not only have a preference, but also explore the body of work of certain actors and actresses, albeit the ones that I followed have more established careers, maybe prominence in the 80s, 90s, even 2000s. I'll be honest, a lot of movies, recent movies nowadays, they don't appeal to me as much. I mean, I still watch them and there are some gems out there, but we already know a lot of movies nowadays are sequels and remakes or prequels or reboots. Yeah, but the standard actors or actresses that I've followed in the past, let's see, I went through a phase where I watched Arnold Schwarzenegger movies and then some Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, a fair amount of Tom Cruise, Tom Hanks, a couple of Ethan Hawke, a couple of Mel Gibson ones, Robin Williams, can't go wrong with that. Same goes for Eddie Murphy. But two actors that have really stuck out for me are Steven Seagal and Nicolas Cage. I will preface this by saying that I only seen two Steven Seagal movies. And honestly, they were probably the best ones that he has. And that's not saying much. But Nicolas Cage, oh my god, he is a different beast. He has a huge body of work that is very diverse. And there is no way I will be able to watch every single Nicolas Cage movie in my lifetime. I mean, I could dedicate my life to it, but I'm pretty sure even Nicolas Cage doesn't watch all his movies. With Steven Seagal, it is more of his personality and lifestyle and how ridiculous and unaware he is. Oh yeah, Sylvester Stallone, that was another actor I watched too, but I'm not talking too much about him today. I mainly heard of Steven Seagal through this YouTube channel called Space Ice, where he pretty much makes fun of Steven Seagal movies. Well, he makes fun of many other movies too, but predominantly Steven Seagal movies. And Steven Seagal, he has a huge body of work also, but he is a shining example of quantity over quality, because in most of his movies he is portrayed as some cool guy or some kind of hero, some kind of action star. He's like some kind of government agent, police, FBI, CIA, or some kind of stranger that goes to an Asian country. And a lot of these movies are dated or rated very lowly or direct to DVD. And honestly, it's probably funnier to watch the Space Ice videos, which makes fun of the Steven Seagal movies, than the movies themselves, because the movies themselves are a huge waste of time. I'll just start off with the two movies I actually watched. I think I watched his first movie, his debut movie. I forgot when it came out. I think it was the late 80s. It was called Above the Law. To be honest, I watched so many movies, I don't remember the plots of all of them. But in this one, he's pretty chill, you know. He's like down to earth, like local guy in the neighborhood wanting to do good. And he does have the action chops, I'll give him that. Well, back then, he was slimmer and more fit, to say the least. Yeah, Steven Seagal, he specializes in Aikido. It's similar to Judo. I guess in a way, it's like using your opponent's force against you. Personally, I've never done Aikido myself, but from what I've heard, well, some martial arts are more for performance and display. And of course, any martial arts is good. I mean, you give yourself a fighting chance, but some are more for demonstrations as opposed to like MMA fighting. Yeah, there have been videos of Steven Seagal demonstrating Aikido where people just run up to him and he just flips them over to the ground. But that is a stage fight. That is just to make Steven Seagal look good. Yeah, I don't know the entirety of Steven Seagal's life. As a matter of fact, I don't think even he knows it, because he lies a lot. His true ethnicity and origin story, it is muddy to say the least. He might be part Russian, part Native American, part some kind of Asian. He said that he was supposedly trained by some like martial arts masters in Japan, but then that fact was disputed by the dojo themselves, and they said, oh, that master never met Steven Seagal, or that master died before Steven Seagal came to Japan. And of course throw in some misogyny and infidelity, but that's not surprising. I don't think he even aspired to be an actor in the first place. It was just some friend who was an agent and said, "Hey, you're pretty good. You should try this acting thing." And he got it through his head. And I think the first two movies, he has some decent chops in it. I'll be honest, in Above the Law, I don't know the full plot. But one thing that I remember, and I know everyone else remembers, is how funny he runs. Like the way he runs, it is very feminine, to say the least. And there's nothing wrong with running like a girl if you're a girl. But he's not. It's like he keeps his like whole torso upright and he dangles his arm in a weird way. I don't even think he's running for speed, you know? He doesn't look cool when he runs. Like people who look cool when they run is like Will Smith in The Bad Boys when he runs with like the shirt unbuttoned and it flaps around. That is definitely not Steven Seagal. There are videos of it on YouTube and there are jokes and comments that say that the bad guy, Steven Seagal, catches him because the bad guy looks back at him watching him, but then he stops and like bursts out laughing. The other one I saw was called Under Siege. That one was pretty good, where Steven Seagal was in the Navy, or a Navy cook or something, but then the ship was taken over by a terrorist led by played by the actor Tommy Lee Jones. Oh, he played a good villain for sure. And of course there was some woman on board that Steven Seagal had to rescue. But he sneaks out of captivity, he rescues the woman, he sneaks around on the ship, he finds and fights the terrorist, and he saves the day. That's pretty much the premise of most Steven Seagal movies. That he's the good guy, he saves the day, he gets the woman in the end, all his colleagues look up to him and adore him and worship him. I mean, I could watch other Steven Seagal movies too, but life is short. And honestly, a lot of them had the most random titles like Exit Wounds, Today You Die, Urban Justice, Belly of the Beast, Attrition. Because some of them had the most ridiculous premise. Like one time, I think he was a pen pal with a Native American girl or something, and then he has to save the environment or save a forest from being deforestation in order to dig for oil. And a lot of times he's in the criminal underworld. And one interesting thing about most Steven Seagal movies is that he usually goes to a strip club. There was at least one strip club scene in most Steven Seagal movies. And honestly, I would not notice all these funny things about Steven Seagal and his movies unless it was from that Space Ice channel. It's not just the way that he summarizes the movie. And I'm very sure oftentimes he summarizes the movie in a way that is completely inaccurate, but he does it on purpose to make it even funnier. But he emphasizes many Steven Seagal tropes, like using stunt doubles for many things, even for talking and walking, and especially going upstairs. And over the years, Steven Seagal, he packed on the pound, so he is pretty lazy, to say the least. And in a lot of the movies, when he fights, he likes to quote-unquote slap people. So there's like a lot of slap fighting, sissy fighting. There are literally movies where he sits in a chair and fights. And many movies where he just like storms up to a random place, like Mr. Big Shot in town, and just starts causing mayhem or a ruckus. One time he stormed up a Italian restaurant and a grocery store, a bar, a lumber yard. He somehow gets himself into a dispute, or he causes the dispute himself. And of course the movie scripts calls for him beating up everyone in the scene. And another thing about Steven Seagal movies is that they're pretty violent. I guess he really wants to lay down the law and show the hurt that he inflicts upon his opponents. And behind the scenes, I heard that he is very difficult to work with because he is egotistical. He changes his mind. He's often late. He often hurts his co-workers, like the stuntmen or his co-actors and actresses, to the point where he injures them. There was a sketch comedy show called Mad TV back in the day, and there were many skits that made fun of Steven Seagal. And the consensus is that for Saturday Night Live, he was the worst guest that they ever had. Because for SNL, he was not funny. And the SNL actors and actresses, they are seasoned, they have experiences, they are funny. If they weren't funny, they wouldn't have a job on SNL. But he made everything awkward. And there was literally one skit where it lasted like 6 or 7 minutes long, which is not typical for an SNL skit. And it's pretty much some kind of like corporate board meeting, and in the end he just like pretty much wrestles and then hurts everyone in the board meeting and destroys all the furniture. Come to think of it, technically I did see Steven Seagal in one more movie. It was called Machete, and it was a star-studded cast. Of course, Steven Seagal was not the star. It was Danny Trejo, but he fought Steven Seagal, and Steven Seagal was the villain. But Steven Seagal had some kind of clause in his contract or some kind of preference that he did not want to be defeated by Danny Trejo. So pretty much when they fought, I guess Machete injures him enough, and Steven Seagal's character just admits that he loses, but he commits suicide and continues to stab himself in the stomach. That's it. That's how much of an ego he has. He can't admit that he loses. Like I said, most of the things I learned about Steven Seagal, well, not just from the Space Ice channel. There have been many career retrospectives for him, YouTube that is. And it talks about his muddy background and all of his antics. And he is supposedly a police officer and went through some kind of training. Well, apparently that training was informal, if anything. But despite that, they gave Steven Seagal a TV show where he goes around as a police officer. But of course, that show did not last very long because in one of the raids, I think he rams his truck into someone's house and kills their dog. Yeah, so that was pretty much the end of it. I believe he has many criminal charges against him in America. So right now, he is hiding out in Russia. And I heard that towards the end of his career, he began to self-fund his movies. I don't remember the last Steven Seagal movie that was made. I think it was made somewhere in the late 2010s, maybe early 2020s. At this point, I only want more Steven Seagal movies to be made so that the Space Ice YouTube channel can make fun of it. And it's not just what he makes fun of, because there are several other channels that make fun of Steven Seagal, believe it or not. I guess it's how Space Ice makes fun of him. It's like a drawn out, exaggerated, sarcastic voice. And I highly recommend that you watch at least one or two of those videos because they are absolutely hilarious. The first couple of times when I watched them, I cracked up. And I'll be honest, I don't laugh as much anymore. But those videos, oh my god, I was like to the point of tears. Yeah, many tropes in Steven Seagal movies. Or he thinks he's some kind of special fighter or a tactician or a special ops. But he has a tendency to do random spin moves when shooting with a gun or holding the gun incorrectly. Or shooting but not looking at where he's shooting at. Yeah, and I already mentioned the stunt doubles. And usually you use stunt doubles for fighting, but he has stunt doubles for walking and standing also. And a lot of the fight scenes, they are very cheesy. They are very poorly choreographed. They are not meant to be taken seriously. And the plots, they are pretty nonsensical. Like certain plot points are introduced but never tied up, never revisited again. And of course, Steven Seagal, he has plot armor. I don't think he dies in any of his movies. But there's always like a love interest who dies or a partner who dies. Like I say, it is the tone of the Space Ice guy that really makes those videos hilarious. I can only do a poor impression of it, but his voice is like, this movie is the Steven Seagal movie, mega hit blockbuster movie, where he showed the world, like insert blank here, like some kind of like physical prowess. It is very sarcastic, to say the least. I forgot what movie it was, but there was one scene where Space Ice makes fun of him, where the movie literally starts out with a woman who has a bomb in her breast. And there's like 3 minutes to defuse the bomb. But then Steven Seagal just deduces that the perpetrator is in the apartment building behind like the woman. And in that 3 minutes, he just happens to find like the right apartment and the guy is there. And keep in mind, Steven is a police officer, but he just thrashes the guy and wrestles him and throws him around the room and breaks a whole bunch of furniture. Of course, the entire course of this is way more than 3 minutes. And of course, the camera work, the camera angles, it is very choppy and it shows many scenes repeatedly multiple times. Of course, Steven Seagal, in a lot of these movies, he's not only the actor, but he could be a director, producer, screenplay writer, all three. Yeah, but after messing around with the guy in the apartment, he arrests the guy and makes him kneel down. But during the middle of the arrest, yeah, he also figures out how to defuse the bomb. Yes, but in the middle of the arrest, he kicks the guy out the window. It's very nonsensical, like out for no reason. Like this guy, he's beaten up, he's surrendered, he's on his knees, hands behind his head. I forgot how tall the building was, but it was at least like 2 or 3 stories. And quoting Space Ice, Steven Seagal kicks him out the window, not once, not twice, but 13 times. Yes, I found a movie, I didn't watch the whole movie, but I specifically watched that scene. And they really cut 13 times of the same scene of the guy getting kicked out the window and flying out the window and landing on the ground. And somehow he survives. And spoiler alert, you're not missing much. That guy, he shows up later and has a final fight with Steven Seagal towards the end of the movie. Yes, well anyways, after Steven Seagal kicks him out the window, he tries to have a one-liner and he talks into the walkie-talkie. Hey, somebody get this guy a glass of water. Looks like he got the hiccups. Exactly. It makes absolutely no sense. It was just thrown in there out of nowhere. But that's Steven Seagal for you. His life doesn't make sense. His movie doesn't make sense. It's like a comedy or anything. It's like the most non-self-aware guy out there. Maybe he's in on the joke. Maybe he knows that people are laughing at him and making fun of him. Like I say, I don't hate Steven Seagal, but he's not a role model. He's just an interesting character, if anything. If I had to conclude this segment about Steven Seagal, I would recommend those two movies, Above the Law and Under Siege, because that was when he was younger, fitter, and was a good actor in those two movies. But if anything, I highly recommend the Space Ice YouTube channel. It is absolutely hilarious. And it's not just Steven Seagal movies. There's movies for all the other actors I mentioned earlier. But I say Steven Seagal has like the most movies that this guy makes fun of. Yeah, Space Ice makes fun of, well, not really make fun, but review and provide commentary for Jean-Claude Van Damme movies, Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Nicolas Cage. It's entertaining, if anything. Now, moving on to the next topic of this episode, Nicolas Cage. And you already know, I like Nicolas Cage more as an actor than Steven Seagal, but he is pretty interesting in his own right. I don't know much about Nicolas Cage's personal life. I know that it is a stage name, that his last name is really Coppola, related to Francis Ford Coppola and Sofia Coppola, who are both movie directors. I also know that he made a lot of money from all the movies he made. However, he spent the money very lavishly and wastefully, that he got into a huge debt. Well, luckily for him, his movie career did not stagnate, but he just took on pretty much any role in any movie at one point in his career. A lot of those direct-to-DVD bargain bin movies with the most ridiculous premises. But I guess one good thing about that is that it showed his chops as an actor. Needless to say, he is much more versatile than Steven Seagal. I believe he has way more movies than Steven Seagal too. And he is still an active actor and still making movies. He released a movie this year where he is a surfer, though I'll watch that eventually. Not a huge priority right now. I don't remember the first Nicolas Cage movie I watched, but the first one that came to memory was called Moonstruck. That was released in the late 80s. He starred alongside Cher. Yeah, I knew Cher was a singer, like who sang like, "Do you believe in life after love?" I didn't know she was an actress also, but surprisingly, that was a good movie. Yeah, Nicolas Cage, he had heart, he expressed his struggles. That's the thing about his acting, he really gets into character. He goes balls to the wall. He has no inhibitions. He does not hold back. Yeah, pretty much the premise of that movie was that I think Cher was going to get married to Nicolas Cage character's brother, but she needs to get something from Nicolas Cage or needs to talk to him. But then they end up falling for each other, and then they go out on a date to the opera, I think. Yeah, it is very Italian influenced. And then I went down a brief Nicolas Cage rabbit hole. My wife already saw The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which was a quote-unquote remake of, or some kind of reboot, whatever, of the old Disney movie The Sorcerer's Apprentice, or that one scene from Fantasia, where Mickey Mouse was a wizard, or a wizard's apprentice, and then he tries to make a broom like dance and I mop the floor for him, but he ends up flooding the room. So Nicolas Cage plays the wizard who took on the apprentice. And honestly, Nicolas Cage, he was really cool in that. He was magical. He had a good fight scene. I mean, I can see why the movie itself did not make it big, but he was solid in that movie. I guess that's the thing about the Nicolas Cage movies I pick. I tend to pick maybe solid ones or the ones that stand out or had good reviews or represent him most, because I know he's been in a lot of trash movies too. Interestingly enough, I saw the movie Gone in 60 Seconds one time, but I didn't remember much, so I rewatched it. That one was pretty cool, where Nicolas Cage's brother, I think he got in trouble with another gang for like not stealing enough cars or something, and gets kidnapped, so Nicolas Cage has to steal all those cars in order to save his brother. And surprisingly enough, Angelina Jolie was in that movie. Yeah, so he's pretty much a car thief, like an underground criminal, and he had this old reputation for boosting these cars. I think his name was Memphis in that movie. That's the thing about Nicolas Cage. He could be a cool character, he can be a big doofus, but he, I guess, suppresses his ego when it comes to acting. It's like he takes it seriously, but doesn't take it seriously at the same time. And the thing about those Nicolas Cage movies, they do have heart, they do have drama, they do have stakes, they do have reason or rationale. And sometimes when it is not as clear, it is still entertaining. It is still worth watching. I think there's only one or two Nicolas Cage movies I regret watching, but I'll get to that. One that I definitely did not regret was The Wicker Man. Yeah, that one was a remake of a 1970s movie where the old movie starred Christopher Lee. He was the cult leader. And Nicolas Cage, he wasn't the cult leader, but he was the guy who goes onto the island and discovers the cult. Yeah, to be honest, that movie, it's a bit slow at first. And if Nicolas Cage was not in it, it would have made the movie a lot worse. But Nicolas Cage, he does the most random things. He runs like from house to house and all these little girls are wearing masks and he just yanks their masks off. Where he bursts into a classroom and starts interrogating the little girls in front of their teacher. And there's a couple scenes where he fights, well, this like big buff lady. And then another scene where he kicks this other lady and she topples over a table and like lands into the wall and crashes, and all of the picture frames and the glass like break. Yeah, I mean, not misogynistic really. It's entertaining. You just take it for what it is. But at the end of the movie, he discovers the reason behind the cult, the reason that they lured him onto the island, and he's allergic to bees. Well, the character is anyway. So there is this one scene, which is a huge meme on the internet, where the cult members hold him down and put like a beekeeper helmet mask thing, and they pour the bees into his mask. And Nicolas Cage, he's like screaming, "Oh, the bees, not the bees!" And he's like thrashing and shaking his head, and he's like, "Oh, my eyes," while the bees don't even go into his eyes. Yeah, that scene is cut from the real movie, but it is very unnecessary to say the least, because after they pour the bees in like water into Nicolas Cage, they release the bees and then they give him the epinephrine or epidural. Oh, epinephrine. Epidural. That's something different. So they trigger his allergic reaction and then cure him of it, only to break his legs and like have him burn on the giant Wicker Man thing. Yeah, one movie that was acclaimed, but I wasn't really feeling, it was called Mandy, where Nicolas Cage and his girlfriend, they were living in the woods, but then this cult, I'm not sure if they were vampires or devil worshippers or some kind of demons themselves, but they kidnap and murder his girlfriend in front of him. And there was a scene where Nicolas Cage, he is in the bathroom in his underwear expressing his grief and like screaming. And then he goes on a rampage and kills all the demons and the cult leaders. Honestly, not my favorite movie. It was a bit slow, kind of boring if anything. I will admit the premise and the cinematography was interesting, though there was another movie that's also in the late 80s called Vampire's Kiss. Now that one was ridiculous also. So Nicolas Cage, he slowly begins to believe that he is transforming into a vampire. Meanwhile, he is terrorizing his subordinates and like chasing her throughout the workplace and jumping on desks. And then he's seeing a psychiatrist. And there is one scene where he just recites the entire alphabet. And there was another scene where I think he ate a dead something, like a dead rat or bird or cockroach or something. But it was a real animal and he was really into character. That's why he ate it. And of course, the one scene where he figures that his transformation was complete, so he's like a lunatic running around the street screaming, "I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire!" Yeah, so you already know this episode, or most of my episodes, they spoil a little bit, but I try not to spoil too much. But regardless, you have the description, and most of these movies I listed, I do recommend you watch them. Hopefully when things settle down and I have a bit more time, I'll continue watching more Nicolas Cage movies. Well, two good action movies in the mid-90s was The Rock and Con Air. The Rock, Nicolas Cage starred alongside Sean Connery, who played one of the previous James Bond. But they pretty much infiltrate Alcatraz. Though there was this one huge chase scene where Nicolas Cage chases Sean Connery all through the streets of San Francisco and caused so much collateral damage. That's the thing about some Nicolas Cage movies. He can change accents or nationalities on a whim. In Con Air, he was some kind of southern guy who was discharged from the military and came home. But then he got into a fight and accidentally killed a guy, so he was jailed for that. But when he served his sentence and was going home, he was on this airplane, so that's the Con Air. But then the inmates hijacked the plane, and a bunch of random craziness ensues. There was one point where they land in some fictional city near Fresno, and then the plane takes off again, and then they land in Las Vegas. And Nicolas Cage has a stuffed bunny for his estranged daughter that he never met yet. So there's a scene where he tells the bad guy, "Put the bunny down," in a southern accent. Yeah, so they land in Las Vegas, and of course more collateral damage, more like there's like a chase scene with a fire truck. Honestly, a lot of these movies are ridiculous. But yeah, The Rock and Con Air, those are two entertaining movies. I recommend both of them. But I do not recommend Ghost Rider. That is a boring movie. I literally fell asleep during it. I think maybe he bit off more than he could chew. He thinks he can do any role, every role, but to begin with, the plot and premise of the Ghost Rider movie wasn't very good to begin with, so not even Nicolas Cage could save it. There was a shorter indie movie called Mom and Dad, where Nicolas plays like the father of one of the kid characters. That movie is a bit shorter, but the premise is pretty ridiculous. So there is some kind of sound wave frequency that causes parents to want to kill their kids, pretty much. So the frequency turns on when the kid's at school, actually specifically when the parents are coming to pick the kids up from school. But then the parents just go crazy and start terrorizing the kids and tackling the kids in the field and running around in the street. Yeah, and the two kids, they are brother and sister. Yeah, they come home and then they learn about the frequency and figure out what their parents are doing. And then they lock themselves in the basement and barricade themselves there. Eventually, they find ways to outsmart the parents. Of course, that's another opportunity for Nicolas Cage to go crazy as the crazy dad who runs around the living room and the kitchen trying to kill his son and daughter. And of course, National Treasure. I don't remember the full plot, but I just remember that Nicolas Cage, he has to steal the Declaration of Independence, and there are clues behind it that the founding fathers left, and the clues are at various monuments around Philadelphia and Washington, D.C., and you're supposed to find some kind of like secret treasure that the founding fathers left behind. Yeah, there's like adventure and mystery, and of course the Declaration of Independence is the first MacGuffin. I don't remember if it was rated PG or PG-13. Of course, there's a villainous group trying to chase them, track them down, trying to get the same objectives. Yeah, I guess it could be considered a heist movie. There was another movie based on the H.P. Lovecraft story, The Color Out of Space, where out of nowhere there was this, I guess they call it The Color, but it's kind of a purple light or frequency or wave that just causes things to go crazy and die out and quote unquote fuse together. Of course, Nicolas Cage is the father, but he finds things happening to like the pets and the farm animals and the crops, and eventually his family members. To be honest, it gets a little grotesque at times, but hey, it's an H.P. Lovecraft story. Those creatures were otherworldly, and they were, I guess, pioneers for their time. It sets up this whole aesthetic, if anything. Yeah, not my favorite movie either, but very interesting. Way better than Ghost Rider, but then again, most things are better than the Ghost Rider movie. There was another acclaimed movie called Leaving Las Vegas, where Nicolas Cage, he was down on his luck and he quit his job and he goes to Las Vegas and meets this other female character. I don't remember what her role was, either an escort or something, but they connect and bond and live with each other. But then he becomes like a major alcoholic and his old demons catch up to him, and they had to reconcile their relationship from there. I mean, technically, it was a good movie with good story beats and good acting and whatnot, but it's a little slow in my opinion. Not my favorite Nicolas Cage movie, but still very good. I believe it won some awards. That's the thing about Nicolas Cage. He can star in the most critically acclaimed movies like Golden Globe awards and whatnot. Though I don't think he won any Golden Globes or Academy Awards. And he can also star in like the most trashiest, lowly rated Rotten Tomatoes movies. And there are movies where he is very in shape, very buff, very attractive. And there are movies because his character is like pathetic and schlubby. And I watch old Nicolas Cage and new Nicolas Cage movies, and you can see his like how he changes physically. But he's still the same guy. He is still there. Now, Lord of War. Now, that is an interesting movie where Nicolas Cage is a Ukrainian arms dealer. And there are scenes where he speaks Ukrainian, I think. I don't know how fluent his Ukrainian is. And Jared Leto is his younger brother. Yeah, he just deals arms and weapons to war-torn countries and factions that are fighting each other and making a profit off it. But of course, over the course of time, he loses himself and his family becomes affected. Yeah, Jared Leto, I mean, I know he's the lead singer of 30 Seconds to Mars and he has his own cult following and can be kind of weird sometimes, but he was a good actor in that movie. Yeah, that's the thing about a lot of these Nicolas Cage movies, or the movies I watch. They are a product of their time, but many withstand the test of time and make you lament that you wish that more movies like this are still being made with plot and atmosphere and character development, where it's not just like an AI version of a movie, not just like a Mad Libs movie, not like a Netflix movie. Another interesting Nicolas Cage movie was called Valley Girl, where this girl, she's in the richer area of Los Angeles, maybe Beverly Hills, and he meets Nicolas Cage, who's like a teenager in that movie. They meet at a house party and they bond and they develop a relationship. I don't know how to best describe the dynamic. It's kind of like a Rose and Jack in Titanic, or like the boy and the girl in Skater Boy song by Avril Lavigne. Yeah, but he tries to get her to branch out while he's kind of like the young, slummy guy, but they find a way to connect. Renfield is a more recent movie where Nicolas Cage plays Dracula, but the premise is more on the character Renfield, who is Dracula's assistant, but Dracula keeps Renfield in an abusive relationship and he's trying to navigate and find his way out of it. It was an entertaining movie, I'll give it that. Bloody, of course, but then again, it's vampires. Another highly acclaimed Nicolas Cage movie from the late 1980s, where he and Holly Hunter are a lower class blue collar worker household, but they can't have children. But the big wig in town, I think he has like quintuplets or sextuplets or something, and they kidnap one of the kids to try to raise as their own. But then hijinks and hilarity ensues. Yeah, that one was critically acclaimed also. Another one I chose to watch was called City of Angels, where Nicolas Cage plays an angel who watches over people in the real world, and when they pass, he guides them to heaven. But then he comes to realize that there is more to life than this, or he wants more than this, and he develops a connection with the Meg Ryan character. Yeah, Meg Ryan, she's a good actress also. You see her in When Harry Met Sally and You Got Mail and Sleepless in Seattle. The movie is a bit ridiculous and a little slow at times, but all Nicolas Cage has to do in that movie is just stand there and stare in a bewildered face. But he plays the role well. He plays the angel's good intentions and naivete pretty well. Once again, not my favorite, but worth watching. The last Nicolas Cage movie for now is one of the more interesting and better reviewed Nicolas Cage movies I've seen out there. It's called Adaptations, directed by Spike Lee. It was the first Spike Lee movie I've watched. I mean, I just know that he's a big New York Knicks fan and he hangs out courtside at the game. But the premise, it's very interesting. Yeah, so Meryl Streep follows this, interviews this swamp guy and then falls for him and writes an kind of biography about him. And Nicolas Cage, he plays twin brothers. So one brother is trying to write a screenplay to be adapted from the Meryl Streep book, while the other brother, he's more outgoing and assertive, but kind of a slacker, but still has a good heart and very encouraging. Yeah, this was another star-studded movie with Judy Greer and Tilda Swinton. And of course, the screenwriter brother falls for the Meryl Streep character. And then he follows her and tracks her down, but then finds out that she has been rendezvousing with the swamp guy, and then his twin brother finds him and follows them. Yeah, honestly, I am not doing these movies justice just by describing them. Yeah, but you know that one Disney Channel show, Liv and Maddie, where Dove Cameron plays both Liv and Maddie? Yeah, Nicolas Cage did that like 20 years before that. But it was a good movie, it was a good premise, good actors and actresses, good characters, good progression, good cinematography. Yeah, I guess I was pretty fortunate to have a bit of downtime to just explore and watch these movies. Not just the Nicolas Cage movies, but all the movies from the actors and actresses I mentioned above. Okay, it was mainly actors, though there are a few good actresses out there too. Oh yeah, Adam Sandler, that was another actor whose movies I watched. I guess if there was a takeaway from this episode is that if you do watch movies, I mean, watch it for you and do a little bit of due diligence before you watch the movie. Don't just watch whatever. Have a standard, have a preference, do a little research, have an open mind, have a list, do a little bit of reflection afterwards too. Yeah, some movies you can be passive about it, but other movies it is worth much more when you're engaged in it. And it makes me wish that there were more actors and actresses with strong bodies of work, that because these actors, you go to the movie to see them because they are the feature, they are the star of that movie. And you get to see skill sets and versatility and who takes it seriously and who doesn't, who can be in a compelling story or deliver a compelling character, and who's just in it for the paycheck. But the paycheck actors and actresses, eventually you know who they are and you're not as inclined to watch their movies, or you can tell that they're just filing in their performance. Yeah, but long story short, Steven Seagal, he is a very interesting character that is worth looking into. Absolutely hilarious. Nicolas Cage is hilarious too in his own right. I don't even know what fraction of all Nicolas Cage movies I've watched. Maybe a fourth or a fifth? I'm just guessing. Just but all those Nicolas Cage movies I mentioned above, I recommend most of them. Mandy's okay. You're not missing out on much. Yeah, don't watch Ghost Rider. Not worth it. But yeah, once again, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time. Bye.